It's live from the Heartland, featuring hosts Michael James and Katy Hogan. On today's show, our guests will be Jim DeNomi and Gordon Thompson. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
We don't know. We got a mind.
Hey. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. We're on WLUW 88.7, anywhere in the world. Tell your friends and your neighbors. We've got a good lineup today. We're going to go over a little bit of banter. Katy and I are here. Thom is off camping in California. We look forward to having him back next week. So let's get ready, get set, and go. Good morning, Katy Hogan.
Good morning, Michael James. How are you today?
You know, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm glad to be alive.
Yes.
I'm glad to be in Chicago. It's a beautiful day. There was smoke downtown. We haven't figured out what that is.
I know. Right as we approached the the studio here, we saw some smoke coming from what looked like a high-rise. It was high in the air smoke.
Downtown.
Very
If someone
scary.
knows what's going on, give us a text.
Yeah, give us a text if
Katy
you know
or
what's
Michael.
happening, because, yeah. So this is a happy weekend for thousands of people from one end of this country to another and beyond. It is Gay Pride weekend.
Hallelujah.
As I usually say, be careful out there, kids. Play safe.
Well, there's a lot of activity. I know up in Rogers Park, both at Le Piano and the Art Public House, two ends of the ward, there are like festivities planned.
Two ends of Glenwood Avenue.
That's true. I got to say, being up on the north end there, it's seeming like more of a gentrification tendency in that neck of the woods and down toward Morse Avenue. Not so? You don't know?
I wasn't ready for that.
Okay, next week, another time.
Anyway, Pride North happens on Glenwood Avenue between Lunt and Morse all day Sunday. Music, a lot of boom boom. I can hear it when I go to sleep. Anyway,
And Sunday at our public house, too, up on Jarvis.
That's right. I think today is Dyke March, but I don't know where that is. So I'm not with. There's a lot of activities. I mean, what's interesting
You walk
to me,
out your door, you'll find something to do.
What's interesting to me is how ubiquitous Pride has gotten and how accepted it has become as a celebration that everybody could take part in.
You know, I want to point out that I've talked very often about how there was a lot of acceptance around pride issues and gay issues. And I think that's because a lot of people, either in their own family or in their friendships, know gay people. And certainly in the area of civil rights for African Americans, things have not progressed as fast. And, we've had great advancement on one sector, and we've had some backward push on the other.
Absolutely.
So those are things just to be aware of.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up. I think it's great that gay marriage and acceptance has happened in many, many ways. And I think at the same time, what you just said, it points to a gaping inequity across our acceptance monitor here in this country. What else? Today in our neighborhood, just like last year when we were led by a couple of neighbors who simply said, we cannot handle the news of this family separation at the border 1 year ago. And we had a march that went through the neighborhood, started at Morris, went down Clark, ended up at Toohey Park, about 400 people. It was very kind of instantaneous thing, but it made us all so happy with our neighborhood.
Protect our immigrant neighbors.
Yeah, and today is National Refugee Day. Is that right? Is that the right way to say it?
I think so. Well, that's the information I got from
World
you.
Refugee Day.
World Refugee Day.
And in our neck of the woods, it's happening at Potawatomi Park, which is 7340 North Rogers Avenue. And right in the middle of the day, there will be a Human Family March. So if you've been frustrated, and I know we all have, from the news, by the news that we hear from the border and what's going on down there, put your feet where your heart is and go over to Potawatomi by noon and take part in the World Family March. It's the least we can do.
There's also a book sale going on in our neighborhood, Kate. You want to tell people about that?
Okay, might as well, since you brought it up.
Well, you put it on the list.
It's happening from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. today at the Chicago Public Library Rogers Park branch, 6907 North Clark Street. You can get your books there. They're selling large paperbacks for 50 cents, hardcover for $1. and 5 for $1 on pocket-sized paperback books. You get the idea. This is a way to get your library up to snuff for the kids. There's kids' books, there's CDs, etc. It's sponsored by the Friends of the Rogers Park Library. God love those folks. And all proceeds go to build the book collection and acquire programs for our branch library.
We had a death in the neighborhood. Katie, why don't you share the information on Kettles?
All right. Well, a man, I forget his first name because we all knew him as Kettle, which is actually his last name. He's Jamaican immigrant to our neighborhood at least 30 years ago. I can't remember.
Been around a long time.
First time I saw him, but last Monday was the last time I saw him. I was on my Constitutional down to the pier. I saw Kettle, and I decided against leaving him be, which is, to me, now very significant. Normally, I just let people have their privacy, but for whatever reason, I went down to his end of the pier, which everybody in Rogers Park knows is beyond the lighthouse, quote-unquote.
Well, it's where the people who are fishing are.
Where everyone
and
fishes.
And where the turnaround for others.
And I greeted him. He giggled at my saying, better be quiet, because he had at least 5 lines in the water. And he smiled, and I said, all these years, you've been holding down this spot. It's doing so well. 24 hours later, Kettle was dead.
I actually saw him the next day, or that day. I actually took a photograph of him and 2 other people who were fishing and, had a quick little talk when I was turning around.
So we both saw him on his last day.
Then the word was he went for a swim, and some people say had a heart attack. We don't know exactly what happened, but long live Kettles. We'll remember you, and thank you for being who you were.
We also lost a real fighter for justice. Since we're going down that route right now, might as well include Bruce A. Dixon.
Dixus.
Bruce A. Dixon, who is a former Black Panther.
Oh, I'm sorry, different guy.
Organizer who spent a lot of the last few years of his life down in Georgia, I believe, but he was here for Harold Washington. He was here for many struggles. He was always on the right side of justice and always telling us to, get up and get out. He was an organizer, a true organizer. Bruce, you were a wonderful human being.
A lot of people are
in your transition.
A lot of people are paying attention to what happens to the old Heartland Cafe site at Glenwood and Lunt. And there was a decision by the new alderwoman, Maria Haddon, to not grant the zoning change, which would have allowed 6 stories rather than 5. Now, 5 he can do as he likes. Any thoughts on that, Katie?
I have a lot of thoughts on it.
That's why I asked you.
Some of which are probably too complicated to go into at the moment. I really like the guy who's the developer of this site. I really think he's trying to figure out and do what's right by this site that's important to so many people. He does not need, as you pointed out, a zoning change to put up a fairly significant building, but he asked for a zoning change to go taller. And what I'm worried about in the lack of getting that change is whether or not we'll still get public space on the first floor.
Well, the other issue is that the word is there'll be less affordable units if it's only 5 stories rather than 6. So that remains to be figured out, and we'll give you reports as we go forward.
Yep. Today also on the south side is the Jazz Institute of Chicago's Birthday Bash. It's actually a 3-day event, but today at 3:30 p.m. at the Logan Center for the Arts, which is 915 East 60th Street, hosted by the great Isaiah Collier and the Chosen Few, a great concert in honoring the Jazz Institute, and bless you all. Isaiah Collier, according to our knowing engineer, is one hot jazz musician.
Moving into a little bit of political stuff, I'd like to remind people or let people know that Tiffany Caban won the district attorney's race in Queens, New York. Queens has more people than 12 states. And she ran on a platform of decriminalization around sex workers, jumping turnstiles, crimes of poverty.
He didn't mean sex workers jumping turnstiles.
No, those
he
are,
just put those in
those are
funny
both
order.
crimes of poverty. It's a big victory for criminal justice reformers who want to end the war on drugs and mass incarceration. So
How did you find out about that, Michael?
It was all over the news. Plus, I got kids living in Queens.
That's what I was thinking. That's
And
what I was
grandkids.
going for, because you wanted to remind people, like they knew about the race. But
It is
it's
a big deal.
significant. It's totally significant.
On other political things, how about you giving us a short one on the Supreme Court, Kate?
Supreme Court did a couple things this week.
Yeah.
The most significant is they passed on adjudicating or talking about dealing with gerrymandering. I understand that Ms. Justice Kagan's rebuttal is eloquent on what this means for the democracy. It's a fairly serious lack of decision coming from the Supreme
terrible.
Court. And we're going to be suffering the results of it unless we turn over some legislatures and quick for years to come.
On another front, they did send back to lower courts the Bush administration request, not the Bush, the Trump administration's request to include a question about citizenship on the census.
Right. That was the split. It's like,
Roberts went
take
with
back. Give me, take back.
Yeah.
Let's not praise Roberts. Roberts is the one who's been after allowing the worst kind of gerrymandering since he was in the Reagan administration. That's his pony. He was happy to ride it this week. So
I was only going to say that. Okay, go ahead.
Citizenship question is a biggie, and glad that they didn't inflict their 5-4 mindset on that one.
Well, they still might.
Well, they still might, and Trump already, of course, in his Trumpian way, said, "Well, maybe we'll have to put off the census." Yeah, let's just remind people he can't put those things off, including the election. Speaking of which,
He didn't win the election.
right? Speaking of which, we had debates this week. Did you watch them, Michael?
You bet I did.
Oh yeah,
I watched them real close to the TV.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And what do you think? What
Well,
did you
I got to
think?
say, I thought Elizabeth Warren came out really well the first night. I think actually women were the prominent front of the place people on both nights. I did think that, I went into it kind of liking Beto because I've met him and taken his picture and met his kids.
He's a sucker for that sort of thing.
I am. But I thought that Castro, who was the mayor of San Antonio and was head of HUD, I think, I thought he emerged as really centered and together and took precedence around the immigration stuff. He's not getting mentioned. Warren and Booker are being mentioned as the kind of victors the first night, and the second night it clearly was.
Kamala Harris?
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting, I got an article from Brookings by John Hudak who said 3 women won the Democratic debates: Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Savannah Guthrie.
Hey, we're back with more Live from the Heartland, and you are listening to that tune is called Sunday Dreaming by Exit, X-I-T, Crossing of Indian Tribes. A guy named Thom B was the front man. They recorded on Motown, and back in the Rising Up Angry days, I brought them into Chicago for 3 days and later visited them out in New Mexico.
I like the way you do things full circle, Michael.
I
Very
like
good.
everything comes back around. We'll see how that goes on other fronts.
Which,
Okay, so now one reason we picked Exit is because we have our friend Jim DeNomi, who is also the host of Voices from the Circle on Sunday mornings here on WLUW. He is a Native American brother from up north, and we're going to talk about Indian country far and wide. Good morning to you, Jim.
Bonjour.
welcome back, Jim.
What is that,
nice
French?
to have you.
Everyone thinks it's French, but it's not.
What language did you just speak by saying good
Chippewa
morning?
Bad River style.
Right.
I like that.
Excellent.
Chippewa Bad River.
That's the Rose.
And
Well, tell us a little bit about. We could start anywhere. What do you want to start with? How about we talk about one of the ways this came to be? Again, you've been a guest before, and we run into each other from time to time. But I think I sent you an article about women on the reservation and issues of violence against women across the United States and probably in Canada. Can you talk a little bit about that and some things going on around it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not new news. It's been going on and been going on. In fact, I went back after you touched base with me online. I went back into my files and I found this old publication by Amnesty International called the Maze, M-A-Z-E, of Injustice. And it's the failure to protect indigenous women from sexual violence in the USA. And there's a lot of good information in here, but the best part, I think, is still usable, but we need to make it known out there. But there was a lot of things about ending discrimination on the basis of indigenous status and gender, developing comprehensive plans of action to stop violence against indigenous women, to ensure accountability. A couple of other things, end impunity for abusers and increase federal funding and ensure appropriate, effective policing. So all those things are important.
Who wrote that?
This was published by Amnesty International.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, you are involved with the organization MAST, and I think that is you tell us what it is, but you also, out of that, you've been involved with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah, I did get an appointment to an environmental protection agency which deals with the permitting of the dredging and filling of the navigable waters of the United States and the protection of the adjacent wetlands on either side of those waters. And when the Clean Water Act was passed in the 1970s, the word tribe with a capital T was never used in the statute language.
Interesting.
So Indian tribes never had control of the waters that ran through their sovereign nation lands. They had nothing to say about it, nothing to do, et cetera, et cetera. So we met for over a year and a half to revamp that language.
When was that going on, those meetings?
2015 through 17.
Wow.
And
so you overlapped the changing of the guard.
Yeah, we sure did.
DC.
And well, there's something about that I'll share with you at the end.
Please do.
But the point is that we finally got our Native brothers and sisters at the table. So now wherever it says state with a capital S, there's T with a capital T, tribe with a capital T on there. So we got the tribes at the negotiating table.
Nice
now.
work, Jim.
Yeah, and now the control of the navigable waters, the dredging and filling of them, and the protection of the adjacent wetlands is now, could be, if the tribe chooses to do so, could be their responsibility.
How do you feel in that light then, because of all the attention that happened thanks to Standing Rock and the no Keystone Pipeline? How do you feel about tribal interests and responding to these kinds of gas and pipeline developments?
I think it's really appropriate because at this point, MAST is the Midwest Alliance of Sovereign Tribes, and it is the 35 tribes that call the Great Lakes home. So the interest in water and the environment all around it is like a huge issue with just these tribes alone. In fact, we call the Great Lakes the lungs of America, and they're very important.
I'm looking at, I wish, this is not an audiovisual show, but Jim brings a lot of stuff with him. And so on our table right now are bear claws in a beautiful necklace.
Eagle
Be
feathers.
careful, Michael.
Golden eagle feathers.
Very beautiful golden eagle feathers, along with the permission to carry eagle feathers. And a copy of what we used to carry at the Heartland, the Mazingaigan? Is that?
Mazanayagan.
Oh, yeah. I know
Mazanayagan.
Mazanayagan. Ay, caramba. Anyway.
Which is a magazine that people could find. It's just real quickly, MAZINA''IGAN.
Yeah, and that's, speaking of the lungs, there's a great shot of what I would call the Great Lakes bioregion and the associated tribal...
The inland seas of the Heartland.
That's right. That's right, which we must protect, people. Don't let Nestle put their straw in it.
So, Jim, what else does MAST do? And are there other associations of Native tribes around the country, and do you interact?
Yes and yes and yes.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, the
Okay, next.
MAST really deals with the issues on a tribal by tribe basis, but they unite to discuss the similar problems if they have them, and then to deal with any dealings that they may have to do with the United States government. And what I noticed when I went back and finished up my work on the EPA subcommittee to give them a report about what we accomplished and what they can expect to find down the road, there was an undercurrent at that meeting of the 35 tribes that call the Great Lakes home, and a lot of different issues, some related, some not so far related, but there was an undercurrent of people being very concerned about the federal government not continuing to recognize tribes as sovereign nations.
Of course.
And so it
want
was
that
always
land.
So it's here. Oh, here's this new program for you guys, and then nothing sitting down at the table, nothing at the kitchen table, no arm wrestling, nothing. And that's kind of what was the undercurrent that I experienced at that meeting of all the leadership of these tribes. The 35 tribes around the Great Lakes.
So do the tribes themselves have unity enough on certain points for your happiness? Your satisfaction,
Kind of, sort of. You can start at the top, I guess, if you can use that term. But there's the National Congress of American Indians, headquartered in Washington, D.C. They're right in the belly of the beast. And so that's one organization that tribes can work with to accomplish things. But then on a regional basis, there's a lot of things like MAST, like the Midwest Alliance of Sovereign Tribes, or if you go into Wisconsin. By the way, Wisconsin has more Indian tribes and more Indian people than any state east of the Mississippi River. It's really incredible. So
that's easy to believe.
Yeah.
For east of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
How do they compare with, say, one of the western states, like Nevada or Utah or Colorado?
South Dakota.
Well, let's put it this way. There's 562 federally recognized tribes in the United States right now. So if you think the G20 has issues, they could exist in Indian country, as they call it.
Right.
And but there's always an organization either up in the Pacific Northwest or
in the southeast, southwest.
Yeah, you name it, or the Four Corners area. Where,
Yeah.
where the four corners of the four states is the only spot in the country where the corners of four states all come together.
Yes.
Yeah, that type of thing.
There are tribes that really don't get recognized too. Like I'm thinking of the Lumbee, which are kind of a mix of African American and Native people down in the southeast, North Carolina. They're the ones, I think, when the Klan had a rally once, they came and drove the Klan out.
Yeah.
But I know they aren't recognized as a tribe, I think.
It's one of the things I love about Michael James. He only would come up with the Lumbee.
Well, I use the magic phrase federally recognized.
Yeah.
There are many, many other tribes that do exist but are not recognized by the federal government. They might be state, like the Shawnee tribe in Indiana. Nobody knows about these people because they're not federally recognized.
You do now because you're listening to Live from the Heartland.
So, by the way, if you ever want to get into law as a young person, and you really are Mensa-oriented, Indian law in America is the most complicated area of law in the United States.
Why did they do that? Why and
Was
why
it
in the world
Cherokee
would they do
or
that?
just all over?
All.
All over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what I was curious about is the land buyout that you were talking about earlier before we started.
Yeah.
Can you expand?
Yes. There's a woman, I truly admire her. She's no longer with us, but she's about 5'0", but she's a warrior. She's what we call an Ogeechee Dakwe, a woman warrior. And she really resented the federal government's policy, here's as policy, not agreed to by the Indian folks, to sell the land to tribal citizens on the reservation. But over time, if a tribal person married a non-tribal person or a non-Indian person and passed away, the land would get transferred to that person, and then that land could be sold. And after a while, if you looked at it from outer space, down on a reservation, it would look like a checkerboard
right.
about who owned the land and who had the responsibility for it. And basically what was happening is that the tribes were losing their land base.
Amazing.
Yeah. And she went and did her homework. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about her.
I'm getting goosebumps hearing about her.
Goose grumpies.
She went and sued the federal government and succeeded in winning $3.4 billion for a massive land buyback program, which started 2 years ago.
Ogeechee Dakwe.
Yeah, very good. You got it down.
Yeah, I want to be called that one day.
Well, speaking of land, and I know we talked about the Menominee tribe a little bit. I have spent some time up there with my friend Dwayne Teller, and you were married to a Menominee woman.
Yes.
And I remember one of the issues way back in the 70s was a woman named Ada Deer, I believe, who, and they were selling land and creating kind of vacation homes for probably non-Indians. And I'm just wondering, what's the situation up there now?
Well, all that happened because the federal government stepped forward one day and just said, "You're no longer an Indian tribe." No deal.
Yeah. Didn't that change back, though?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Good.
But Ada Deer and her militant girlfriends literally would go to the real estate offices and lay down in the entrance to the parking lot and link their arms so that nobody could drive in and buy what was their land.
And this was in the 70s?
Yeah.
But she had opposition from the youth, too, the AIM people, weren't they? Remember when they took over the...
Nike missile site?
No, that was down
No.
here. They took over where the Catholic priests lived.
A rectory?
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yes. But there was some internal bickering, but it all turned out that the tribe was eventually restored to its tribal status, and as a result had their land back, kind of, sort of, because a lot of that land did, when they were no longer an official tribe, did get sold to people who were no longer not part of the Indian community.
Now, you said, one of the things that the Menominee do is they grow an awful lot of pine trees up there. And they shipped wood out to the Dakotas during the struggles out there. And you just mentioned earlier that the new arena somewhere is built from wood from the Menominee Reservation.
Right here in our backyard. You should know, first of all, that the Menominee Reservation is 235,000 acres of woodlands. And it's big enough to be an actual Wisconsin county.
What's the name of the forest there? Or is it not named? Because
That's their land.
Okay.
But NASA sometimes uses their satellites to focus their lenses from outer space because the land around the reservation has been timbered out, clear-cut during the housing boom, and then farmed out. But the ancestors of the Menominee people said, you know what, we're not going to cut down all these trees. We'll take that one, but not that one, and then we'll replant. And they actually have more forests today than they had back in the 1800s. And so from outer space, the boundaries of the reservation are so acute that they can focus their lenses for their satellites.
Because on the other side of the boundaries, there are no trees.
Right.
Dang.
Now, the other thing is that the University of Northwestern University in Evanston on your
Yeah,
north
we're
side.
familiar with those guys.
That's your neighborhood.
Close.
And they just did a $110 million revamp of the Welch Ryan athletic facilities on the campus. And the Menominee tribe is still harvesting trees, but in the old ways. And as a result, they're in this eco-friendly loop of suppliers of materials.
Oh, wow.
And as a result, they're
getting jobs.
The Wildcats of Northwestern now play on a basketball court that came from the Menominee Reservation.
Like
Hallelujah.
That. Like that a lot.
Well, go ahead,
Can I
Kate.
just ask, given we mentioned the local tribal scene, and what we remember hearing not that long ago was the move away from the American Indian Center on Wilson Avenue. Do you know anything about that?
A little bit, yeah. They were at 1630 West Wilson.
Yep.
And which was an old Masonic temple at one
That's
time, which
right.
was a little creepy.
I know. I always thought it was like some kind of writing of the thing.
I'm not saying the word haunted, but other people have.
Okay.
So,
I think I heard you say it, but hey.
but
anyway.
they have moved, and that facility is now a condominium, as I understand it, and with underground parking. And
Yeah, it's getting all fixed.
but now they've the American Indian Center of Chicago has now moved over to Ainsley, and I can't give you the exact address, but they are there.
Is
but
it in Augustana College, perhaps?
No, they have their own facility.
Okay.
You're talking about.
And but
St.
they still have the same issue, the same parking issue that they had at the old location.
None.
It's Chicago.
Yeah.
When I first moved into Uptown in summer of '64, and then I spent a number of years up there off and on, and there were a lot of Native Americans living in that neighborhood, and the Indian Center was close, and it probably still is close. But what's the situation with the Native population in Chicago these days?
It's really diminishing. The Uptown neighborhood used to be the epicenter of the Indian community in Chicago, based upon a policy that was inflicted upon tribes right after World War II to relocate to cities for better education and better jobs and all this stuff, which never happened.
Forced off the land.
Yeah. And then in more recent times, and I used to have an office right on the corner of Lawrence and Broadway, in the old Broadway Bank building.
Oh, yeah.
And I could look out my office window, and it looked like a poster because I could see the red line going right down to Wrigley Field.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we were. Mm-hmm. But what has happened is gentrification of the neighborhood has caused the Indian population to relocate. And as a result, there's no epicenter anymore. It's just scattered throughout the community. A lot of the tribal citizens have gone back to their reservations or just gone off to other areas. So it's not like it used to be back in the time when you were in that neighborhood.
I'm going to bring us back to the res. We had a fellow last week who Chris Buddy made a great movie about blackjack and like these heavy hitter gambler dudes. And so he had some pretty harrowing experiences when he was on a reservation casino.
Or harrowing.
Harrowing, is that the word?
Yeah.
Sorry. And, some really heavy muscle telling him, you're not in the United States right now, and blah, blah, be careful what you say. Have casinos been good for the Native community? Have they? Are there any negative problems with them?
Not really. And part of what I did do on my show a while back when it was starting to affect policy and federal government and Indian tribes is that suddenly I wrote an editorial called The Myth of Indian Gaming. And basically it was a beginning to affect policy in places like Washington, D.C. and state governments and how they dealt with the tribes. Because, well, you got a casino, you got no more problems, everybody, what was happening is that there probably were a half a dozen tribes that were just making money hand over fist, and the ones that still went ahead and did it anyhow really were getting family supporting jobs. They weren't putting duct tape on their cars, no more coat hanger antennas, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't what everyone outside the reservation world thought it was. And now it's still working okay, but it's and some tribal citizens get some allocations from the revenue. One of the big things that really affected what they could do is that the federal government said, you tribes can go ahead and do all this stuff if you want, but half of what you make has to go back into infrastructure. And try telling that to the president.
Well, yeah. What does that mean? Does that mean infrastructure for the community, for the gaming outfit?
For the reservation.
The actual reservation.
Yeah. Which is
not a bad idea.
Yeah, well, let's let them make that decision.
Right. That's true. What a concept.
Yeah. Jim, one of the things that keeps coming up is the use of Native American symbols as mascots. And I have a poster that has things like the Kansas City Kikes, and kind of a play on that. But you brought in something that is really kind of neat. It's a T-shirt that says "Fightin' Whiteys." Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, I was helping run a program at the University of Colorado, and the campus up at Northern Colorado had an intramural basketball tournament, which was basically all Indian students. And so each one had a team name, but none of them had any money, so they had to do stuff to sell T-shirts and caps and all that kind of stuff to have enough money to play in this league. And one of the teams in this league at Colorado State came up with the name the Fightin' Whiteys, and they were number 10. And
what's it say on the bottom there?
In cursive writing, it says, "Everything's going to be all white."
All white.
Yeah. And the man depicted on it looks like Ward Cleaver.
Yeah. It's from a kinder, gentler time.
It took off. Well, they wanted it to be even today because it took off and they sold a gazillion T-shirts and hats and all that kind of stuff.
Did.
And so was it an appropriate name? No, just like a tribal name would be, but. Right. But it was a little softer, and it sold like hell.
You also pointed out as we approached this. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kate.
You were talking about the misuse of the word tribal. The way it's used in mainstream media often depicts some
bad behavior.
People fighting each other like kids who need to be separated.
Yeah.
And to use that term, you rightly pointed out.
It bugs the hell out of me.
Yeah, I bet.
When I go look at Fox or MSNBC or CNN, and they always have these panel of experts, quote unquote.
Right.
But as soon as one side of the fence gets on the other side of the fence, it becomes tribal.
Yes.
Anything nasty becomes tribal. And in my experience in growing up with my own grandparents and family, aunties and uncles, is our tribal people are spiritual. They help each other, and tribal is putting your arm around somebody someone who needs a helping hand and doing something good about it.
Jim DeNomi, you are a man who is an example to all of us.
And
Your
before we let
commitment-
him go, we have to point out that he is the host of Voices from the Circle on Sunday mornings here on WLUW. And would you please tell us a little bit about your show?
Voices from the Circle, which is carried by Native Voice One, nv1.org. And once we do the show here, and my show is really designed to be crushing a stereotype. And part of it is you'll hear the drumming and chanting you would expect to hear from a Native American show. But then once we do that, we also hear reggae, hip-hop, blues, jazz, polkas, but it's all done by Indian people.
Yeah.
And we do Indian storytelling and what's going on around town. And if there's a big issue, we get on it. But all of the other stations, programs on our network, Native Voice One, the Native American radio service, tend to be more issue oriented than we are, and we thought, we just need to listen to like Rita Coolidge,
Well, you named a bunch of people that you play, from Link Ray, Buffy St. Marie, Rita Coolidge. You mentioned a rapper named Casey Inc.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, Katie, you want to take us out?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Jim. I thank you very much for coming on again, for gracing this presence with eagle feathers.
And I just want to say, Nindajan Nakaz, Magdaweg Ve, Jimashkazibi, Ojibwe, Shanabe, Eshkanagan, and Haines Odana, and Dunjaba.
Thank you, and back at you.
We're going to be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Jake's going to give us a tune. We're not sure who it is. It could be Jim Pepper. Could be one of the people we've mentioned. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Take it away, Jake Levy.
Hello, and we are back. Thank you, Link Ray. And that was Rumble. Yeah. Michael James, my co-host, and I are happy to welcome our good friend, Gordon Thompson. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland, Gordon.
Hello, Chicago. Great
Yeah,
to be back
baby.
in Rambler Town.
Yeah.
That's what he says every time he comes on the show.
Well, it feels good. I worked here for 15 years, 1984 to 1999, to close out the millennium at good old Loyola.
Yeah, you did some good work.
You were a hell of a track coach, and I just wanted to say that our previous guest, Jim DeNomi, was the 880 high school champion in Wisconsin in 1961. And so you guys have been hitting it off before the show, talking track and field.
Yeah, I tried to predict
I was very impressed.
Jim's state championship time back in
I
1961.
couldn't believe you came within hundredths of a second.
So I was putting it at high school for one context, then put it at 1961 for the second context, then I put it in Wisconsin for the third context. It all came to me with a 157 800.
You were a hell of a recruiter. You had a bunch of
And
All-Americans.
he was slightly faster at 157.1, right? 0.7.
0.7, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Good old Jim.
Yeah.
Yep, nice job there. And Link Ray had some Native American background. He was Shawnee, right? Nice.
Okay, Gordo, we got a list of stuff to talk about, and let's just start off with the Tokyo Olympics, which a lot of people aren't even thinking about yet, but you've got it in my mind, and we're all looking to go to Tokyo in 2020.
Hey, Tokyo opens up 1 year from right now. This is going to be a pretty cool Olympic Games.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Facial recognition. Yeah,
Wow.
boring to you, but this is
No,
high
no,
tech.
I didn't say boring.
So,
I was like, no, that was not a
for
boring thing.
ticket holders will be facially recognized. No scamming on tickets this year. And to get into the Olympic Village, you have to have facial recognition. So this is pretty high-tech, new, identification, no longer fingerprint.
So we're copying the casino runners who we talked about last week on this show, who have a very highly developed facial recognition thing going on to pick out their APs, their advantage players. But I'm glad we're following suit and
I'm
keeping
putting a
it
bag
going.
over my head with a couple holes.
Well, it could improve your look there, Michael. So at Tokyo is pretty cool. Every host is allowed to bring in up to 5 new sports. So here at Tokyo, we're going to have 5 new sports.
Tell us.
Hey, baseball's back in.
All right, I love
Thank
it.
heavens.
So, last time around.
Give the U.S. and Cuba a shot.
Yep. Baseball is back in as well as softball. So that's going to be a pretty neat
softball.
deal.
Great.
And then there's like a whole new mix of things coming in called mixed competition. So it's mixed between genders, men and women
Oh,
competing
interesting.
together instead of separate.
Interesting.
And to provide some really good
So what
competition.
what sports are they doing mixed?
So here's a whole new deal. It's like almost half of the program is mixed. Archery is having mixed. Judo having mixed.
Whoa,
this is could
baby.
be a little bit dicey. Shooting has mixed. So with your
Penny
pistol.
Oakley.
Yeah. And then two sports near and dear to my heart, swimming and track and field, both have mixed relays. On the swimming part, the 4x100
That's thrilling.
relay is going to be a mix. 2 women, 2 men on the same relay.
Totally thrilling to me.
And then on track and field, a mixed 4x400 relay where
Wow.
2 men, 2 women.
Wow.
And this is like strategy plays out big. Do you
I'm
put
sure.
your women up front or you put them at the end? You want to go a man, then a woman, then a man, then a woman, or you want to just lay it out based off of what other teams are doing. So strategy of where you're going to place your fastest and your not so fastest people are going to be really good. That's going to be fascinating. And then triathlon is going to really ump it up with a mixed relay. Then they're doing a short form of the triathlon, but then really spicing up with relay action.
Is the Olympic triathlon the smaller numbers, not the Ironman level?
Right. It's called the sprint, which would be the 1,500 swim. And
Will there still be gender specific like a relay races?
of course.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
All right.
They're
So
not getting away from
the
that.
next thing, let's just keep on talking
Wait.
about. Go ahead.
Let him
Tokyo
finish.
is we're just starting with the mixed stuff on there. Now they add
Okay.
5 different sports. Karate is new. And skateboarding is new. Skateboarding. So 2 different types of
Didn't
skateboarding.
they have skateboarding before?
Not at the
No.
X Games, never at the Olympics.
oh.
So this is going to be huge of skateboarding.
Oh, I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of snowboarding.
Snowboarding, yeah, at
So
the
it's-
Olympic Games.
So now they got the dry land version.
We got the dry land version, and there's 2 different deals. One is called Park, where they basically have a hollowed out swimming pool
Right. Mm-hmm.
with no water in it, and just be able to run up the sides and down around and go on technique.
Uh-huh.
And then the other one is going to be the street boarding. So that's more for
Good
speed
for
and
Tokyo.
time.
Good for Tokyo.
But they've added 2 more pretty cool sports
Come
for
on.
Americans.
Let us have
And one is surfing. That's going to be, I've been watching surfing on TV a little bit lately and trying to get into the scoring and stuff. And it's a pretty dicey sport because it's all about catching the right wave.
Right.
Looking out
And
for
Mother
sharks.
Nature controls who puts up a
Right.
good wave or not. So, yes,
Interesting.
surfing is going to be a pretty cool deal. And then the one that's going to take off for the future that's going to be just blown up is a sport climbing. And 3 different disciplines in sport climbing. You got the speed. Who can scale up a 15-meter wall the fastest without falling?
And then there's-
and then the bouldering, which is technical, and then leader, which is also like a team combined. Having a.
I'm gonna love that.
So that'll really blow up over time.
Yeah.
And then basketball is adding a new aspect of basketball for this Olympics. This should be prime time for Chicago guys.
What
A
is it?
3-on-3
Oh.
half court game, first team to 21 points.
Wow.
They got that on TV now, 3-on-3.
3-on-3.
Old guys, old pros. Well, the guys I've watched.
Gordon's looking at him like he's cross-eyed. What do you mean,
well,
old guys?
Speaking of being cross-eyed, we're going to go to something else skewed. We came up with a term odd S in baseball, but we put it to odd stuff in baseball because Gordo is focused on a couple of teams that are kind of doing odd stuff.
Odd stuff in baseball. One is the Orioles. My Orioles from the East Coast. They're hurting bad, and not just a little bit hurting, way hurting. You think you got some tough times here in Chicago, but the Baltimore Orioles are falling on record lows, and it really focuses on one athlete. Unfortunately, Chris Davis, $21 million this year for one season, and he can't get out of his own way. He's batting 161 when he used to be almost a 300, hitting 47 homers a couple years ago.
Isn't baseball a team sport?
It's a team sport, but you're required to play this one person. Since he's making $21 million, they got to play him. They can't sit him on the bench, and he just ruins the team chemistry. His body language is horrible. He's just like, I suck, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Whoa.
So deal with it. And the way he comes off on TV is just ugly, and the whole
Have him
thing
watch
is
some
ugly.
inspirational movies.
Well, he needs a mental coach. He
Yeah,
needs
he needs some
somebody to
leadership
really
to,
just be able to say, "Hey, let's settle down. Let's just get
Knock this
that."
stuff off.
What other odd stuff in baseball is there? You got the Rays. You want to talk about the Tampa Bay Rays?
Tampa Bay heading to Montreal.
Well, that was what you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
So they got to change the mascot from the Rays to what? The Aways. To going away. So why would Montreal, who had a team, the
Yeah.
Expos, and then they became another American team, the Nationals, right?
That's
Washington
what they became,
Nationals.
yeah.
Washington
So
Nationals.
why would Montreal say, okay, now we're ready for baseball again?
Well, they were using an old stadium that was left over from the Pan American Games in the '60s, I think, way back.
Well, that was the Olympic Stadium, 1976 Olympic
Isn't that where
Stadium.
the Expos played?
It played in the
So they
Olympic
build a
Stadium.
new stadium for them. Is this really going to happen? Tampa Bay going to move?
Who knows? You pointed out to me that Tampa Bay doesn't actually play in Tampa
No,
Bay.
they do play in Tampa Bay. Tampa is on one side of the bay and St. Petersburg's on the other. They're in St. Pete, I believe. It's an indoor kind of stadium.
Yeah, no one's going to those games. Those indoor
but
games.
they're playing good ball.
Yeah, why would anybody want to indoor? Well, of course, it's really hot there in the
Yes,
summer.
it is.
That's why.
Well, let's go to something the more current that a lot of people watch, the Women's World Cup.
Yay!
We had players on the team going up against the orange-haired dude, the president. And tell us about the Women's World Cup and the U.S. team.
Right off the bat, they got a bad rap because they put up 13 goals against their opener, Thailand. So the rap was that these women from America don't know sportsmanship. They're overly aggressive and they have no sense of poise or whatever. Hey, part of getting out of that first round was something called goal differential.
Yes.
So they needed to put up a bunch of goals.
Why are they getting criticized for that?
Because it was World Cup action and people constantly rip one women and then two USA.
Yeah, okay.
So-
there you go. That's the easy answer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's I thought they did a great job.
Yeah.
Why not be fired up for yourself? Why can't they be, celebrate their 13th
Particularly if you got a
goal?
target on your back. You have to lift each other up from the get-go.
So yeah, with the orange hair dude, one player, Megan Rapinoe, who's
I love you, Megan.
who's our top scorer and the woman with a lot of experience. And she got into a little Twitter war with the Donald.
Perfect for Pride Weekend.
Indeed.
And she started it by saying, I ain't going to the effing White House after we win.
No. He started it by making fun of her taking a knee or basically what she did. Isn't
during
that
the
right?
national anthem,
Yeah.
yes. Her
He started it.
Oh, she took the knee.
She didn't exactly take a
But
knee,
she
but she
made
didn't put her hand on her heart.
and she
didn't
doesn't sing. So what? She stays silent. That's
know.
personal pride. That's
But she was being specific and being. She did do that.
Yes.
Because, purposely to make a statement, and of course he picked up on it.
He did, and
because
he-
he's a grammar school boy.
he is a bully, and but her deal is I'm not going to the White House after we win. And his comment, which was the only tweet comment that I appreciated from our president, saying, "Hey, you haven't won it yet."
Yeah, but then she won it.
And they won the
She
semifinal.
scored 2 goals yesterday.
Her first goal
Well, they haven't
was
won the whole thing, but they
Right.
won their game against
France.
France yesterday.
who was number 2. U.S. ranked number 1. France
who do
was
US
ranked
play
number
next?
2.
Who do they play next?
They play England. Let's get through this France game though first, because that was a pretty monumental game that they played yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
And hey, I thought France outplayed U.S.
Interesting.
They had their passing was crisp and clean, and it just seemed like they were just team-wise had it really together. And we're outgunning U.S. U.S. got a lucky first goal in first 4 minutes by Megan Rapinoe between the legs of a French defender. That's always embarrassing. And but it was she didn't even know it was a goal until other people started celebrating.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a lucky goal, but hey, luck is part of the game.
Sure.
You know it.
Sure.
And then her second goal was just brilliant, just to really fire it in from the outside.
And there was a
undefended.
third goal, but it was an offside. So.
Offside taken away, yeah. But, hey, pretty good energy. France, number 2 in the world, ranked at home in Paris. So they had momentum on their side, and really, it was pretty good. It was a really well-played game on both sides.
And the English team is no shrinking violet. So
That's
what
who
do you
U.S.
think-
plays
Yeah.
next. That we play England in the semifinal.
If you're a betting man, who are you going with?
Well, you got to go with who's ranked number 1 in the world, USA. But yeah, England, which to me is a little mysterious. Why isn't it Great Britain's in the World Cup? It's England has their own team. Scotland has their own team. Northern Ireland has their own team. So
They
There was
they
a
need
book
all
once-
those teams.
There was
They
a
need all
book
those
once
teams.
called The Breakdown of Nations, so I'm going to look at that.
I want to know if Wales has their own team. I'm betting no.
well, they probably do, but they're a little bit behind the times. Yeah.
Gordon, one of the other things that's always going on is the role of the NC2A, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, and they keep people being amateurs and can not get any rewards for their work they do and the playing that they do. Tell us what's going on with the great state of California and NC2A.
Well, California's legislature come up with the very progressive idea that student athletes should be able to use their own image to make money. So, like for jersey sales, and so if a good hotshot player with number 12 on his shirt and everybody knows him, those jerseys get sold a lot. Tim Tebow was the perfect, example of that. So California said, yeah, these people should be able to make money off of their own image, but the NC2A that rules all sports in the country has said, hey, if you do this, pass this law, then everybody in the state of California is going to be ineligible for national championship competition. So that put a kibosh. So the NC2A's got to modernize itself. It's constant struggle for the NC2A to get a clue. One, student athletes should be able to make money off of their own image. Hey, if they're got great athletic talent and that's their number and that number sales, why should just the university be making money? Each individual should be making money too. So NC2A needs to grow up and
Gordon
get out of the kiddie
Thompson,
game.
it's always great having you. If there's anything we missed that you wanted to say real quickly.
Yeah, we got a lot.
Yeah.
But hey, we covered a lot too.
Okay.
We still have a lot, but
we have a lot of questions, but we'll have you back sometime.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes,
that
please.
Tokyo missed out by not having a new sport of Pokemon Go.
That could be racist. I don't know.
No.
Okay, so I want to just let people know that next week we are our good buddy Russ Bradford, who's been a guest on the show often, told me about an author named Rebecca Frumpkin. And turns out Rebecca wrote a dark comedy called The Come Down. It's a romp across the U.S. from Kent State to Chicago to the Everglades. It explores the delineating lines of race, class, religion, etc. Rebecca will be a guest on our show next week, and we're looking forward to that. And Katie,
Jim?
do you want to take us out with a little information about...
no, Jim wanted to say something.
Oh, good. Get Jim back on. Here comes Jim DeNomi.
Miigwech. I just wanted to give kudos to Barbara Jersey, who's the co-producer of my show, along with Pam Alfonso, Mavis Nakanish, and Mackie Pamanikut, because they were the founders of the Menominee Community Indian Center of Chicago when they had about 500 citizens in the city here. And over time, they've done so much with the tribe, and the tribe coming down here with their legislators, etc. And as a result, they've been recognized by Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Governance as being a model that other tribes in the United States can follow for keeping in contact with their tribal citizens who don't live on the reservation, who live in urban centers like Chicago.
I am reminded, too, of the Guatemalan woman who is of Native origin, one of the tribal people in Guatemala, who is running a very healthy campaign for president of Guatemala. And she's got a lot of juice behind her. We're going to go out now with... I'm not sure what, but
it'll be good.
We're going to ask you to do good in the world. The world needs all the good
that
we
do.
All power to the people.
Have a great week.
We'll never